Ah, Smart Water, now in a sleek can.
This feels cool, literally.
Perfect for social gatherings and on the go.
Should I start wearing turtlenecks?
One sip at a time, friend. Smart Water cans, for those with a taste for taste. Get yours today.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Summer tastes like Tic Tac. Tantalize your taste buds this sunny season with citrus adventure and orange. 2 everyday flavors that bring summer in every. Tic Tac Citrus Adventure is a yummy, vibrant medley of lemon, lime, and mandarin. And Tic Tac Orange is the perfect mix of tangy and sweet. Visit us at Tic Tac USA on social to refresh your summer with Tic Tac.
The Judge Janine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And welcome, everybody, on this It's Still Cool Sunday morning. We're in June. We can't break 70 degrees. Don't know what to tell you, but I guess when it's like 99 and humid, we'll be pining for the days of early June here in the greater New York area and throughout the country as well. It's been a pretty rainy, pretty cool time of it for the most part, unless you're down south. So enough with the weather. Let's bring in the 2-time New York Times bestselling author of You Will Own Nothing. She is Carol Roth. Carol, thanks for being here.
Yes, great to be with you.
Absolutely. So you have been, we'll put it mildly, critical of President Trump's tariff plan on social media, especially. You call it the Ross and Rachel of this administration, meaning that they kept going out, then they were breaking up, and we see with the tariff, somebody starts and stops, whether it's from a judicial perspective of knocking them down only for an appeals court to reinstate them, or for Trump to put tariffs on a country, take it off a country. It seems that there is a method to the madness, or you say no?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. I'm rooting for America. I'm rooting for President Trump. I want us to be very successful. The challenge, with my background, I'm very focused economically, and the Biden administration handed the Trump administration an incredibly fragile fiscal foundation. We have far too much debt. Everybody knows that. But as a percentage of GDP, it's very concerning. We're running deficits that are at wartime levels to GDP when we're not in a war and we're not in a recession. And we have interest on our debt that exceeds what we spend on our national defense, which is not, by the way, a recipe for success. So when I look at what the Trump administration was handed, my strategy, and, I'm a deal maker. I went to Wharton. I know a little bit about these things, is that I would have really focused on the things that would supercharge the GDP first, because that's really what we need to do. We need to grow the GDP, and we need to reduce spending. And by the way, the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, has said the same thing. So I would have gone with some deregulation. I would have gone with trying to get my friends in Congress on board with cutting taxes and those kinds of things first before I even thought about doing anything on the tariff front. And what it's done instead for those businesses that are engaged in international trade, as it's caused a lot of uncertainty, and it's very difficult if you are a business that has an international supply chain, part of an international supply chain, a supplier that has, an international supply chain, to have any certainty, to make investments, to make hiring decisions, and to make planning decisions, which is counter to, what it is that we were really should be trying to do out of the box. So that's really, my, let's call it suggestions for something that might be better for the economy, for business, and if you're a supply sider, to create that growth that's going to create prosperity for everybody.
Cart before the horse situation. We're talking to Carol Roth. That's the thing, right? The big, beautiful bill is now in the Senate. It somehow passed the House. I mean, Mike Johnson, you want to talk about an MVP who could herd cats. I mean, he has basically zero majority in the House. Thomas Massey on the Republican side, Kentucky, is a perpetual no on everything. So just count him as a Democrat. I know he's saying it's because he's a fiscal conservative, and that's fine. He just never seems to have a plan that he offers up as an alternative. Is always just no, no, no. Either way, it passes in the House 215 to 214. Now it's in the Senate. You have a lot of budget hawks that are not happy with the spending. They want it to go down at least to pre-COVID levels. That's being led by Ron Johnson, Rand Paul. It may not have the votes right now. Do you think this eventually will get across the finish line, Carol, and get to the president's desk? And what are the good things and the bad things in that bill?
So I do think there will be pressure for it to get done. The Treasury is, not out of money, but it's getting lower on cash, and I think that the current spending trajectory is saying that in their checking account, the Treasury General account, that they have, kind of maybe till end of August or September-ish, given current levels. So there's going to be some pressure to get something done. From my perspective, we desperately need to reduce the deficit, and we need to cut spending. Obviously, there's different ways to do it. Some of it is related to this bill. Some of it comes later, in the rescission efforts. So I think as long as there's a plan that's communicated, and I think that's been, frankly, where this administration has dropped the ball, is just with if there was very crystal clear communication on every aspect of what everyone is doing, I think there would be a little bit more onboarding. So if Congress and the administration can communicate, say, okay, well, we're passing this, and then when we're done, our plan is to go back and do these things in this order, because, you can't just cut spending either, just cut it all off today, because then that also will shrink the GDP and cause us to, increase the deficits because we won't collect as much revenue off of a smaller GDP base. So if you could go out and explain, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're staging it. Here's our choreography. Here's our order of operations, because this is our plan is to get to X, and here's the steps that we're doing. I think a lot more people would be on board to know that, okay, this is important. This is the plan, and they're doing it with purpose, because if we did it this way, it would send us in the wrong direction, even though it sounds like it would be in the right direction. So that's what I'm currently holding out hope for, is that we have to frankly eliminate the deficit, but we have to, at least by the end of President Trump's term, cut it into half. And so if there's the clear, outlay, hey, DOGE has identified these things, we can't address it here, but this is the steps that we're taking to address it over the next year, I think people would be on board. But wouldn't that sound good to you, Joe?
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal, and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a Real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a Real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your Real ID at tsa.gov/RealID. That's tsa.gov/RealID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
A clear roadmap going forward, and I've heard Scott Bessent, for example, say that look, this tackles mandatory spending in this bill, because that's all we could go after. Discretionary that's what DOGE has found, and it's just remarkable. And I'm glad you brought them up, Carol. That at one point Elon Musk and Doge, through their official X handle, says that there is I don't know if you know too much about this, so just let me know if I'm getting in the weeds too much. There's a Treasury access symbol. It's an identification code linking a Treasury payment to a budget line item. Okay, it's a standard financial process. And in the federal government, this Treasury access symbol was optional for 4.7 with a T trillion in payments and was often left blank, making traceability almost impossible. So if we're looking just to cut spending and save money alone, that would be a great start that no one would even feel because we don't even know where the payments went.
I mean, certainly that needs to be looked at. When you do an audit, you would do any of that. I do think in the mandatory spending, there has to be fraud, waste, and abuse, right? Just because you have to spend in a certain area doesn't mean that there aren't people who are not getting the payments that they need. There isn't a ton of bureaucracy that can be streamlined. So I actually reject the notion that we can't do more on that piece. But yes, to go back to your point of if you don't know where the money's going, that's probably a great place to look at to start. But I think that's the issue. If we go back to, like you said, pre-COVID levels, and we had the same collections that we had today, just for scope, we'd be running at more than $500 billion surplus. Now, obviously, it's not apples to apples, and there are some things that need to be shifted. But the idea that the government takes from us $5 trillion a year, which is more than the GDP of every other country in the entire world, except for the U.S. and China, is absolutely insane. So we need that fiscal discipline, and we need a plan to get there. I know we can't do it overnight, and it needs to be communicated. So hopefully there's that will. Because we cannot, Congress is the weak link here. We cannot keep up this level of spending. The Trump administration can do very clever things to buy us time here, but we will be in a full-on global meltdown, a full-on global crisis, a full-on global financial reset if Congress doesn't get together. And even if they buy us time now, we're just going to be facing the same thing in a year from now or 2 years from now. So this is a hair-on-fire problem, and we need more people to treat it that way.
Yeah, we're talking to Carol Roth. The website is carolroth.com/news. This has been far too serious of a conversation, Carol, so I want to play a game with you.
Yes,
okay?
I love playing games with you, Joe.
And it's a Doge-related game, however, okay? Please pick from the following 5 options. Which is your favorite thing that our government actually spent money on, okay? Behind door number 1, $10 million for, quote, gender equity in the Mexican workplace. Interesting.
Wow.
Or door number 2, $12.2 million for worker empowerment in South America. Of course, that's very important. Let's see. $4.3 million under door number 3, assisting foreign migrant workers in, ding, 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 Malaysia. Or door number 4, $3 million to, quote, enhance Social Security access and worker protections for internal migrant workers in Bangladesh, mind you, okay? Or behind door number 5, $10 million for male circumcisions in Africa. So those are your 5 choices. What are you going with? I mean, it's really hard to choose one, isn't it?
I mean, you can see all the very worthy causes, and it makes a lot of sense that they're taking, more and more money from you and me to support these efforts and, for circumcision in Africa and migrant workers in Malaysia and whatnot. But, I mean, jokes aside, this is why people are furious, right? This is an absolute abomination. And I do understand that there are times, related to defense where we may have to spend money in a place that sounds crazy and it's actually kind of a side thing. But yeah, there's stuff like this all over the place. And so not only are we paying the money for this, we're borrowing it and financing it. We're putting it on our credit card. So we have all these ridiculous options and we can't even afford them. We're literally like, hey, let's go to Klarna. Let's go to MasterCard and put this one on the charge. I'll take all 5.
There are some maniacs running for more than usual for New York City mayor, including a Democratic socialist named Zohran Mamdani. I'm sure you've talked about him. What do you think about his plan to not only freeze rents across the board, but also move the minimum wage to $30 an hour, and the rich are going to pay for it? What happens in that scenario? Because I have a feeling I know.
Yeah, well, I'm from Chicago, so we've had Lori Lightfoot and Brandon Johnson, who had something like a 6% approval rating. So I understand, how bad this is for New York City, and you got to get it together. But yeah, I mean, price controls have issues, and that is going to end up limiting supply and or driving up prices down the road. So, it's just even Paul Krugman, the worst economist on the face of the earth, knows that you can't have rent control. That's how bad rent control is, that even Paul Krugman gets this one right. But, you got to get it together. Do you think there's any chance that Cuomo would run as a Republican if he loses the primary? Because you guys got to do something.
Yeah, independent, I think, at best.
Okay.
But, who knows? If that's the best option, we got problems. All I know is this. If you move the minimum wage to $30 an hour and you start so-called, quote, taxing the rich, everybody's going to move out. Almost everybody has already, but they're going to Tennessee, Florida, and Texas. Daryl, a pleasure, and go Bears, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. You as well.
I am Joe Concha. This is the Judge Janine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Back with more in just a moment.
The Judge Janine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.